Peace be with you. So this video is about drugs, what the Quran says about drugs, and why it is important. So in the Quran, drugs are not mentioned very frequently. They're mentioned in only 4 places in the Quran. The word for drugs in the Quran is khamr. It is the Arabic word that means basically intoxicants, anything that clouds your judgment, anything that clouds your mind. So in the Quran, God warns us against this, right? And explains even explains why. So in the fifth chapter of the Quran, the fifth surah of the Quran, verses 90, 91, and 92, God says, O you who believe, intoxicants and gambling and altars set up and dividing by arrows are filth, devil's work. Avoid them that you may be successful. Surely the devil is trying to introduce, so there's God telling us what the devil is trying to do. Surely the devil is trying to introduce hatred and animosity among you by means of intoxicants and gambling, and to keep you away from prayer, cause you to forget about God. Will you not then stop? And then this ends with, and obey God and obey the messenger, but be careful. If you turn away, if you turn back, basically, if you don't listen, then on our messenger's duty was only to deliver. So Prophet Muhammad's job was to tell us this, and he told us this effectively in no uncertain terms. Told us that intoxicants and gambling and altar setup, meaning idolatry, and dividing by arrows, which is essentially that's an ancient Arab equivalent to raffling. This is how they divided the meat of an animal. It was a game of chance essentially, and they're filth. They're filth. Devil's work. Avoid them that you may be successful. And in reality, real world, you look at addicts. They are some of the most, we would rate them as some of the most unsuccessful humans on the planet, right? Or people who are compulsively gambling, some of the most unsuccessful people on the planet. So even when we're talking about dunya, when we're talking about this world, drugs and gambling make you some of the most unsuccessful people on the planet. Not only that, when this disease attaches itself to you, it is extremely difficult to get rid of. Addiction is extremely difficult to get rid of. It's like the shaitan got his hands around your neck, and he won't let go. And like the shaitan is a full grown man and you're a 2-year-old child, there is no chance. It is extremely difficult to break yourself free from that grip. That is why addicts sink so low. That is why they touch the bottom of suffering in this world, because the sensation is so powerful. The compulsion is so powerful that you just can't imagine it until you experience it. But once you experience it, it's too late. So it is better to listen to Allah. It is better to listen to God because it is simply stupid to go against the warning of God and His messenger, especially when God warns you, look, I told you, but his job, Prophet Muhammad's job, was only to deliver. So be warned. So do go ahead and do what you do. And God tells us, with intoxicants and gambling, the devil is trying to introduce hatred and animosity among us. Look at the drug ridden neighborhoods. Do people love each other there, or are they afraid of each other? It's that simple. It's like the proof is staring you in the face. The shaitan is trying to introduce hatred and animosity among us by means of intoxicants and gambling to keep us away from prayer and to cause us to forget about God. The most important part of Salah, the most important part of prayer is dhikr. It is remembrance of God. And we are told that in 29 surah, chapter 29 of the Quran, in verse 45, we're told, and recite what has been revealed to you from your Lord and keep up prayer. Surely prayer keeps away from indecency and evil. And remembrance of God is greatest. The remembrance of God is Akbar. Like when you say Allahu Akbar, right? You're saying God is greatest. So God tells you that same word is used, Akbar, to tell you how important this is. Remembrance of God is the greatest purpose of prayer. You're in a busy day. Some people, occasionally a person will forget to pray, and that just shows how little you were thinking about God, right? And what about in all your other actions? If you're not even thinking about God enough to remember to pray, which is like your most important duty according to the Quran, then imagine just then governing your other actions according to God's law. when you're not even thinking about God. It's impossible. That's why God says in the Quran, and whoever turns away from remembrance of God, which is prayer, we will appoint to him a shaitan, and he will be his companion. And they will lead him astray from the path, and they will think that they are guided. So, like, there are some Muslims who don't even pray. They consider themselves Muslims, and they're walking with a shaitan, and they're not even thinking about God, so they're not even thinking about regulating themselves according to what God wants. They are headed for destruction. They think they're Muslims. They think they're guided. So Shaitan wants to stop you from prayer. That's what God says. He wants to keep you away from prayer. So how can the devil keep you away from prayer when God commands you so many times to pray? In a book that commands Muslims to pray many times, all the time, to constantly, and it describes all the important people, all the good people as constantly praying. There is one time when God forbids us to pray. And this is in Surah Nisa. It's in the chapter called the women. It's the fourth chapter of the Quran, and basically in the 43rd verse, God says, "O you who believe, do not approach prayer while intoxicated until you know what you are saying." So God don't want to hear us when we don't know what we're saying. God wants us clear-minded, clear-headed when we know what we're saying. So for people who have been addicts, who have relapsed, all that, and even people who have failed in this matter, God says, if you have failed like this, immediately return to prayer and keep up every prayer, because prayer will keep you away from indecency and evil. Remembrance of God is greatest. So even for addicts, man, all you got to do as Muslims, you got to pray. And if you got to pray, you may not even be in complete remission, but guess what? Your ability to use is so severely limited by prayer, because you got to be sober for the next prayer, that your destruction will be minimal, unless of course you overdose on heroin and die. But your destruction compared to your previous state, although not at the perfect level, would be 99% better. So prayer just saves you. That's it. All you got to do is become a Muslim, and the prayer saves you. By observing prayer, you're saving your own self. Amazing, right? God gives us this tool that tells us, hey, in this there is safety. And people don't listen. They don't take it seriously enough. So drugs are the complete opposite of prayer. They are connected. With drugs, the shaitan is trying to keep you away from prayer, and thus keep you away from remembering God. So then you're just gone. You become the friend of the devil. Just like God says in the Quran, in chapter 43, verse 36. Whoever turns away from remembrance of God, we appoint to him a shaitan. So when you take those drugs, God already told you they're the filth of the shaitan, filth of the devil. Avoid them that you may be successful. But we don't take that warning good enough. Like parents when they tell their kids, don't go in a van, with a stranger with the ice cream. 9 out of 10 of those strangers might be nice, but that 1 out of 10 times the consequences are so severe that you may never recover from. There are kids who get kidnapped, raped, and die. That's it for them. They die a horrible death by not listening to warnings. This is what addicts die. A horrible death. So any Muslim that thinks that they want to try a drug, that temptation is real, especially in the West. All of us are so tempted by any of this. And this includes alcohol, which is probably the worst drug that we can think of. It has most societal consequences. It is most widespread, and usage results in violent and terrible social behavior. So if you have any, if you're a Muslim and you are considering trying these things, be warned and obey God and obey the messenger. But if you turn away, the messenger's duty was only to deliver. Your destruction is your own fault. So that is what the Quran says about drugs.